Welcome to the NAEP 2017 School Coordinator Training. My name is Swea Hart. I am the NAEP State Coordinator. Today's agenda includes an overview of NAEP, an explanation of the design, participation, and sampling for the 2017 administration, discussion on key roles and responsibilities, and a walkthrough of the major MyNAEP tasks. Please note, due to the length of this training, the webinar will not cover the accommodations and accessibility features for the administration. That information will be shared in a later webinar. The purpose of today's WebEx is to gain understanding of NAEP and familiarize yourself with your key responsibilities as a NAEP school coordinator. Consider these commonly asked questions as we go through the presentation to check for understanding. Even if you're not able to answer all of the questions by the end of today's WebEx, you should be familiar with the answers before your assessment date. In this session, I will provide a high-level overview of NAEP, go over the history of NAEP in the district, review NAEP's impact on education, and touch on NAEP's connection to PARCC and other state standards. Finally, we will examine the DC state and TUDA results. NAEP is a federal program mandated by Congress. The U.S. Department of Education's National Center for Education Statistics directs and administers NAEP. The National Assessment of Governing Board, also known as NAEP, has the responsibility for developing policy and developing the design and test specifications for the assessment. The main goals of NAEP are to compare student achievement across states. In order for us to understand how well DC students have performed relative to their peers across the country, NAEP administers the exact same test nationally. The other goal is to track progress over time, specifically in grades 4, 8, and 12. NAEP examines how achievement has changed over time. In addition, NAEP is used to determine how well major subgroups have performed over time in comparison to their peers. As a state that receives Title I funds, all schools selected by NAEP are required to participate in the NAEP Reading and Mathematics Assessment in grades 4 and 8. NAEP has existed for nearly 50 years. The first assessment was administered in 1969 to answer questions about student academic performance. The National Assessment Governing Board was established in 1988 to set policy for NAEP, and it provides the testing schedule for NAEP looking out 5 years from the current year. In 1990, the first states participated in the NAEP assessment on a voluntary basis, and DC was one of those first states. In 2002, district-level participation was introduced. In 2003, NCLB required participation by Title I schools. NAEP continued to be a requirement under the ESEA waiver and will continue to be required under ESSA. The TUDA program, which stands for Trial Urban District Assessment, was designed to explore the feasibility of using NAEP to report on the performance of public school districts. Any large city with a population of over 250,000 people that has at least one school in the city may qualify to participate in the TUDA program. DCPS is our TUDA district, and we are able to see how our students in DCPS are performing compared to other urban districts in the nation. In 2015, there were 21 TUDAs across the country. By 2017, there will be 27 TUDAs participating. NAEP is known as the gold standard of assessments. Developed based on frameworks and a particular test design, it is not aligned to standards like Common Core or NGSS or other state standards that guide our curriculum and summative assessments. Individual student scores are not provided because nationally only a sampling of students are assessed, and they're administered a portion of the test, not the entire test in mathematics or reading. The structure of NAEP has always been to reduce the burden on students. Another unique feature is that NAEP brings in their own team of trained professionals to administer the assessment in your school. The teams will have the tablets, the paper tests, and any ancillary materials needed, as well as protocols to deliver a consistent administration as is done across the nation. NAEP results are used every day to help inform numerous research studies, policy, and instruction. NAEP tests in 12 different subject areas during various years, including subjects like history, art, and technology. NAEP has been used in studies that have helped inform the performance levels for PARC and Smarter Balance, as well as it's been compared to science questions in the framework with the new next generation science standards. The NAEP results will be released this year for mathematics and reading assessment as the nation's report card at the national, state, and TUDA levels. NAEP reports scale scores and achievement levels of states in the nation in aggregate. Again, there's no school or student level reporting. Please note that from a geography perspective, the term national refers to all schools, including private schools. For our purposes, we want to compare our state results to the national public, which includes only the traditional public and public charter schools across the country. It does not include private school results. The scale scores for math and reading range from 0 to 500. And there are 3 achievement levels: basic, proficient, and advanced. NAEP also releases sample items per subject and grade. State assessments and NAEP are designed for different yet overlapping purposes. The NAEP achievement levels are not defined the way that our state assessment achievement levels are defined. For example, proficient on NAEP means that a student has demonstrated competency over challenging subject matter, whereas our state achievement levels look at college and career readiness and grade level performance. The NAEP reading and math results are normally released 6 months after the close of the assessment window. Therefore, we would expect to see results this year around September or October. For other assessments beyond mathematics and reading, it may take anywhere from 12 to 18 months to release those results. Traditionally, the TUDA results are released a few weeks after the state's release, but last year the release occurred simultaneously, which may be a new trend moving forward. Let's look at the results over the next few slides. 2015 was the first year that the nation reported declines in 3 of the 4 subject grade combinations. States in the dark blue showed gains compared to 2013. The lighter blue states showed a decline, and the states in gray were relatively flat compared to 2013. With that said, in 2015, the District of Columbia was one of 3 states that showed gains in grade 4 mathematics scale scores compared to the 2013 results. Grade 8 mathematics scores declined by 1 point from 2013 to 2015, but the drop was not statistically significant, so the results were considered flat. The grade 4 reading showed gains from 2013 to 2015. And the grade 8 reading scale scores were flat. As mentioned previously, the NAEP also reports TUDA level results. The DC TUDA gained 8 points from 2013 to 2015 in 4th grade reading results, and gained 4 points from 2013 to 2015 in grade 4 mathematics. In fact, the DC TUDA had the highest gain of all the districts in grade 4 reading. These next slides will be examining the state trend results compared to the national public trend results, starting back in 2003 up to 2015. The blue line represents the national public, and the red line represents the District of Columbia, all participating schools. In grade 4 mathematics, DC had a 29-point gap in 2003, which has closed over time to currently a 9-point gap in the past state-level administration. The gap in grade 8 mathematics was 33 points in 2003 compared to the national public. Now it has closed to within 18 points in 2015. The grade 4 reading gap was 28 points in 2003, and it is now 9 points as of the past administration. Finally, the grade 8 reading gap is 23 points, is closed to within 16 points. Although the DC students are closing the gap with the public school peers, the work of schools over the past decade and the rigor of Common Core have certainly shown a positive impact on student performance. But I want you to keep in mind there remains more work to be done. The scale scores in all cases were on the lower end of the scale for both reading and math. DC continues to be positioned near the bottom when states are put in rank order. As NAEP reports on various subgroups, we are able to get a picture of how DC students compare with their peers in those various subgroups. The next several slides will look at 4th grade math and reading for the Black subgroup and the Hispanic subgroup. The blue bars will represent the national public students in the particular subgroup that took the 4th grade mathematics or reading, and the red bar is the District of Columbia. In this example, for 2015, the DC 4th grade Black students that took the mathematics test performed better than their peers in the nation that took the same test. In reading, the 4th grade Black students that took the reading assessment have nearly closed the gap with other 4th grade Black students that took the reading test across the nation. Again, the Hispanic students that took the 4th grade math test did better than their Hispanic peers across the nation that took the same test. In 4th grade reading, Hispanic students did better than the Hispanic students across the nation in 2013, but were just slightly lower in 2015. Please consider these questions as you work on the assessment. Now we'll look at the 2017 NAEP design. We'll overview the sampling plan and then review the District of Columbia's inclusion in NAEP. Previously, NAEP administered the assessment by paper pencil with small studies done on computer, which we call DBA, or digitally based assessments. For 2017, the administration will change. Now 80% of the testing will be DBA, and the other 20% will be paper pencil. The other difference to note is that both test modes will be occurring in your school at the same time. Each student selected to participate from your school will either take a reading assessment or a math assessment on computer, DBA, or on paper. Each student will only take one assessment, either math or reading, and they will only take one test mode, either DBA or paper. NAEP will make that determination which student will be assessed in which subject mode combination, and NAEP will pre-assign how many students will be testing in a particular group. Schools will need to work out logistics and decide if additional accommodated sessions will be required. NAEP teams will only have 25 Surface Pro tablets, which will limit how many students may be tested at one time. For large schools, additional teams may have to support the assigned team to complete the administration. I also want you to note that NAEP will bring in all of the technology required to perform this assessment. None of your technology within your school will be impacted. Routers and MiFis will all be supplied by NAEP. To answer the question why schools and students regularly get selected, here's an example of the target student sample size needed this year. In one subject, mathematics, NAEP needs about 2,700 students in grade 4 and 2,700 in grade 8. They would need the same amount for reading as well, which would total close to 5,400 students. If you look at just grade 8 in the District of Columbia, we have approximately 4,500 grade 8 students, which is why all students would likely be selected to participate in order to reach the target sample size. The example presented here would pertain to a school with, say, an enrollment in grade 8 of 50 to 75 students. As NAEP prepares to select which students will be testing in each mode, the first 50 students would be assigned to DBA mode testing in either math or reading, and then the balance of the students would take the test on paper pencil. If you have a smaller school, anywhere from like 20 to 21 students, you'll either test on paper or DBA. Those schools will not be participating in the dual mode testing. If you have a larger school, it may require 2, 3, 4, or more teams working together to administer the assessment in order to accomplish the 80% DBA, 20% paper pencil. Again, NAEP representatives will work with you to help you understand what the breakdown would be in your particular school. NAEP often oversamples the TUDA schools to allow them to have enough sample size to disaggregate the subgroups. In order for NAEP to report at a state or TUDA level, at least 85% of the students sampled must participate. That's why oftentimes if a student is absent, the NAEP representative will ask for another time to come to the school to assess those students that were not available on the original assessment date. Inclusion is very important within NAEP because NAEP wants to understand what all students know and are able to do on the assessment, including students with disabilities and English language learners. It will be your responsibility as the school coordinator to ensure that information is shared with your administration and your staff to understand how those selected students may be included. Previously, many states would demonstrate higher performance on the NAEP assessment but through further discovery, there would be evidence that large populations of students with disabilities were excluded, or large populations of English language learners would not be able to participate in the assessment. Even if accommodations were provided, those students were being excluded. There were various reasons for the exclusion, but nonetheless, it was not consistent across the country. Therefore, NAEP, the governing board, adopted a policy in 2010 to help define which students should and should not be included in the assessment in an effort to increase participation, minimize the variation across the states, and provide clarity and rules. Goals were also established. The inclusion goals for all students is 95%. For students with disabilities and English language learners, 85% of students identified will need to participate in the assessment. Let's examine our reading exclusion rates for students with disabilities in grades 4 and 8. In this graph, the dotted line represents the national public, and the solid line represents the state, District of Columbia. Keep in mind that NAEP adopted the policy in 2010. Prior to the policy, many students were being excluded in DC for various reasons. After the policy, the state has shown a marked improvement in including students with disabilities. Now, for the reading exclusion rates for English language learners in grades 4 and 8. Again, prior to the policy, many students were being excluded. Efforts were being made to be more inclusive after 2010, but unfortunately, there was a spike in 2015. Almost 33% of 8th grade students were excluded from taking the reading assessment. In order to help improve our inclusion, there are policies that each state has to adhere to, and this is the DC Students with Disabilities Inclusion Policy. And it states, only students with disabilities who take the Multi-State Alternate Assessment, MSAA, or formerly NCSIC, or have met criteria for MSAA may be excluded from NAEP as determined by the State Education Agency. The final decisions for students eligible for MSAA this year should be known in January, and those students may be excluded. The policy for ELLs in the district, only English language learners who, 1, have been enrolled in the U.S. less than 1 full academic year before the NAEP assessment, and 2, do not have enough English proficiency to access NAEP may be excluded. It will be your responsibility again to work with your language acquisition teams to make that determination. The only NAEP allowed accommodation that will not be included in the assessment this year is queuing to stay on task. Again, there will be a follow-up webinar on the accommodations offered by NAEP, but I want to make sure that everyone is aware that queuing to stay on task or redirecting is not allowed. Please take time to review and think about these questions. If you do have concerns about meeting inclusion targets in your school, it's very important that you speak with myself, the NAEP State Coordinator, or the TUDA Coordinator in advance so we can talk through and understand what those concerns are and try to assist you. Now let's review specific roles and responsibilities and walk through your school coordinator timeline. There are 4 key roles associated with the NAEP administration. I am the NAEP State Coordinator. The TUDA Coordinator is Valen Cayetano at DCPS Central Office. Our roles are similar to provide the initial student demographic information. We've used data from the October enrollment audit files to provide the initial rosters for your students at your school. We are to coordinate assessment changes or any special requests. So if you see your assessment date and realize there's a conflict with that date, it is our responsibility to assist you in trying to get that date changed. We provide the inclusion policies, and we monitor assessment activities, including exclusion rates, and support you in completing your pre-assessment activities. You're also going to be working with a NAEP field staff member, and that field staff member is going to be your key contact within NAEP to help you complete your pre-assessment activities. They will contact you to work with you. They're going to prepare all of the equipment and materials that are going to be needed and bring them to your schools on assessment date. They're going to coordinate any activities before, during, and after the assessment. And as previously mentioned, they're actually going to administer the assessment at your school. You as the school coordinator are responsible for completing 7 pre-assessment tasks. If these tasks are not completed prior to your assessment date, then the assessment date will not take place. So it's very important that you understand what these tasks are, you work on them to completion, and work with your field rep as well as myself to accomplish completing those tasks. You're going to be responsible for preparing your school administrators and staff, as well as notifying students and their parents about the assessment, and then you will have wrap-up responsibilities. Here's a timeline of the work. We're now conducting training, but as of December 5th, which is next Monday, you will gain access to the MyNAEP system. On that date, you will have the ability to see your student roster and know which students have been selected to take which subject and which test mode. You'll also receive a red folder and a school coordinator instruction brochure in the mail. The red folder will be used to keep any student information. Between the 5th and the 20th of December, you're going to receive a call from your NAEP representative. They'll introduce themselves and answer any questions that you have and schedule a date for your pre-assessment review call. At this pre-assessment review call, this is where you will finalize all of the details of the assessment prior to the assessment date. If you have not received your initial call from your NAEP representative, it's very important that you let Valen or myself know right away. During that same time, you can start working on tasks 1 through 6. There's only one task that you will have to wait until after the winter break before you can complete. That is, update new students list. And between January 4th and January 27th, you will also be conducting your pre-assessment review call. The assessment window itself is January 30th through March 10th. The MyNAEP system securely houses your student roster information and tracks your activities towards preparing for the assessment. It's a vehicle that you will use to communicate with NAEP representatives about the students and the status of the work. The first question you want to ask yourself is that, are you registered in the system as the school coordinator? If you are not registered, or if you're unable to find your registration ID, please contact myself or the TUDA coordinator immediately so that we can help you get registered in the system. If you have registered as a school coordinator, you will have full access on Monday and be able to use this screen and see all of the subsequent screens related to doing the work, completing your tasks. I just want to walk through some of the specific information that is maintained in the system. In the blue banner at the top of the screen, you're going to see your school name and your name listed as the school coordinator on the left side of the banner. The right side of the banner will list your tested grade along with your assessment date. If you have two grade levels being tested, there will be a toggle button for you to go between grade 4 and grade 8. So for this example, in this fictitious school, the assessment date is scheduled for February 14th. Your date again will fall somewhere between January 30th and March 10th. If once you're registered, you see your assessment date and you have some concern or there is a conflict, please let us know right away. On the left side of the screen in the darker panel will be all of the tasks listed that you will need to complete. You're going to select Prepare for Assessment, and the panel will open up to the 7 tasks that you're responsible for completing. The middle of the page contains the instructions and resources that will help you complete those specific tasks. In this example, we're looking at the task Update Student List, and it says complete the following. These are the steps that would need to be completed for Update Student List. At the beginning of each section is a tutorial. The tutorials are roughly 5 to 10 minutes in length, and they're useful to help understand how the process works. You may choose to watch the videos, but it is optional. If you do not watch the videos, you will continue to be able to move forward with the process. Please note that when you complete a task, you're going to receive a white check mark that indicates that your part is done. In order for your school to be officially ready to assess the students, you want to have all green check marks. And the green marks will be generated on the back end as the NAEP representative works with you to finalize the arrangements. Now we're going to go over these 7 tasks. The first task is to review and verify your student list. Then you're going to complete the SD and ELL student information. You will need to notify parents and guardians, manage questionnaires, plan for assessment day, encourage participation, and update student lists. Within each section, we're going to touch on the purpose, look for any new features, and then walk through the process. Again, the very first thing you're going to want to do is to review and verify your student rosters in grade 4 and or grade 8. You want to review their demographic information. You're also going to designate if they are SD, ELL, or have a 504 plan and need accommodations. If there's any missing demographic information, you'll be responsible for filling that information in. You're also going to identify students who cannot take NAEP. This is the process. You're going to print out your materials, update the worksheet, and then you're actually going to make sure that the worksheet that you updated on paper has been translated into the electronic MAEP system. There's a table within the MAEP that you have to update. Each section has a tutorial. As I mentioned, it is the bcove.me URL. Again, it is not a requirement to watch it, but it can be helpful. If you have missing data in your worksheet, it will be highlighted in yellow, and we'll see that in just a moment. But again, you want to print out your roster. Print out the initial roster before any changes are made, and that will be your starting point. You're going to be able to see on this roster if the student is taking math on tablet, if they're taking math, paper, pencil, or reading on tablet, reading, paper, pencil. That will all be indicated at this very first step in the process. Here's an example of what the worksheet will look like. You're going to have your student's name in USI, and then there's going to be a session line number that is generated by NAEP. This number cannot be changed. Students possibly can be moved into a different session if it is necessary, but these numbers will not be able to be altered by you. Then, as well as the subject and test mode. Those pieces of information are generated by NAEP during the sampling process. Everything else that includes demographic information, you will be able to modify if that information is incorrect, or as you can see with the yellow boxes, if the information is missing, you will be required to enter information there. You want to compare the roster with your records, your school records. You can work with a data specialist or someone else in the organization that maintains your rostering information about the students, and you want to make sure that everything about each individual student is accurate. You're going to indicate whether a student can or cannot take NAEP, and you're going to put in a reason why the student cannot take NAEP. You're also going to want to note if a student has a 504 plan. See, these are the reason codes why a student cannot take NAEP. The items in red indicate that the student is not available or not at the school for whatever reason. Either the student is withdrawn, maybe the student is not in this tested grade, maybe the student has a long-term illness or doesn't attend class at your particular location. In purple, if you have a foreign exchange student, you would need to indicate that. In the green are the refusal codes. You can have a parent refuse their child to participate in the NAEP testing. The student themselves can refuse to participate in NAEP, and you would need to code that as well. We ask you as the NAEP representative within the school to help encourage participation on NAEP and help the parents and students understand their role and why NAEP is important. So it's definitely a parent's right to refuse, but we'd ask you to please try to talk to them and get them to understand why the student was selected, and if they continue to want to refuse after that, then you will please mark the reason, parent refusal or student refusal. The reasons in the blue will only show up if you have a student that is SD or ELL. You'll be able to indicate if the student's been enrolled less than 1 year or if the student meets participation criteria for MSAA. This is an example of what the screen will look like as you try to update the individual student information. Again, the student name and the session information as well as the subject cannot be altered by you. You will be able to modify the student's USI if it's incorrect or any other demographic information. You're going to update the tables within the MyNAEP system. If there is any area that has missing data, you're going to get a little icon, a triangular icon at the top of the column to indicate that there is data missing in that particular column. You can sort information where all of the missing information can come to the top. You can sort the columns. Once you've made changes in the system, those particular changes from the original roster will be highlighted in blue. Any updates that are made will be highlighted in blue. Once you've completed updating the table, then you're just going to submit your changes and you'll be complete with that task. I just want to reiterate, if the student is not identified as a student with disabilities or ELL or student that has a 504 plan, they will not show up in this next section. This is the area where you're going to assign appropriate accommodations that the student needs to access NAEP. So if you have a student that needs an accommodation, you want to make sure when you do the review and verify that they have the indication that they are a student with disabilities or an ELL student. You're going to review the NAEP inclusion policies in more detail. You're going to make a determination in this section if you want support from other staff members like an SD or ELL specialist to help you assign the accommodations for students. Maybe it's not your area that you normally work in and you don't have that information readily available. You can work with your IEP teams or your language acquisition teams to make determinations around which accommodations the students would need. Again, this is the process for complete SD and ELL student information. You want to first review that inclusion policy and determine if you need to give access to your specialists. In order to do that, you will simply enter the individual's email address into the MAEP system, and the system will send them an email to register within the MAEP. They will only have access to what you give them access to. So if you have an individual that maintains information for both students with disabilities and English language learners, then you can assign them to have access to all of the records for all the students, or you can only assign them to maybe students with disabilities. You want to print out your materials, print out the worksheets again, and you want to update the worksheets and then update the tables electronically. A couple of new features for 2017. The universal design elements and accommodations links have been improved, as well as the descriptions. The Spanish translation accommodations, there are some pairing rules, and then the Spanish-English version of the test and extended time. Again, all of this will be discussed in the Accommodations and Accessibility Features webinar. To get ready to complete this task, you want to first decide where you're going to get support in order to be able to do that and make that determination. You can include up to 5 specialists to support you. They can have access to the MAEP system. They will only see the sections, again, under Prepare for Assessment that you allow them to see. You want to be able to understand how the students will participate in NAEP, and you're going to use the inclusion policies to determine which accommodations the students need, realizing that they have accommodations outlined on their IEPs. There are some accommodations that NAEP will not provide. One example is the read aloud accommodation on the reading assessment. Because of the construct of the reading assessment, NAEP does not allow the read aloud accommodation. This is an example of the worksheet that needs to be completed. You're going to simply put in letters for all of these columns to answer the question. With the exception of column E, what is the student's primary language, but all other columns, you just simply put in a letter to answer the questions. For example, in column F, including this year, how long has this student been receiving academic instruction primarily in English? and then you will just indicate A, does not receive academic instruction, or any of the other options that are available. This will also be an area where you're going to indicate if a student takes the alternative assessment, as you see highlighted in the red box here. You're going to update the table, and as you did in the review and verify, once you've submitted the information, and you'll be finished with this particular task. But I want you to note that students that are excluded contrary to the NAEP policy are going to be monitored this year. They're going to be monitored a lot closer than they have been in the past. You're going to have the ability to print a report yourself to see what exclusion rate you have for your school. You're also going to receive communication from your NAEP representatives. Emails will be mailed to myself and to the TUDA coordinator, as well as NAEP, indicating that your school has a high exclusion rate, and we'll want to understand why you may have decided to exclude particular students, and if it's possible for them to be tested with or without accommodations. So just to make you aware that you can monitor your own exclusion rates, but we will also be monitoring exclusion rates at the NAEP student and state and TUDA level. The next task is to notify parents and guardians. It's a requirement of ESEA, and it continues to be a requirement of ESSA, that parents and guardians be notified that their student has been selected to take the assessment. You're going to download a letter template and customize that template, and then you're going to upload the letter once you've customized it and verify when you notify parents. Currently, the letter template is in English and Spanish translated version. We will be translating into the other languages that the district provides before the end of December, so that will be an option for you as well if you need to customize in another language other than English and Spanish. If you walk through the process, you download that template, customize it, and then upload it once it's customized, and enter a date when you actually notified parents. Again, you can follow the tutorial if you'd like, the bcode.me, that will demonstrate this process. You're going to want to customize it on your school's letterhead, making sure that the principal has an opportunity to sign the letter prior to having it sent out. And then you want to upload that final notification letter, a copy of the final letter, into the MyNAEP system. It's very similar to when a monitor comes into your school when you're taking this state's summative assessment and they're asking you to provide evidence that you sent notification to parents. Now the MyNAEP system will have that evidence. You can either send the letters out through mail, you can send it home with students, or some schools actually post it in a newsletter. Whatever method you choose to do, you will indicate exactly when your parents were notified, what date that information was sent out. The fourth task you'll have to do is to manage questionnaires. These results will be used to provide contextual data from schools and teachers in the nation's report card. Again, there is no school level or student level results provided. So there's no way for the information in the questionnaires to identify a particular school or location, but the information does feed into the larger picture of understanding overall student information. Your job is to identify which teachers in grade 4 and grade 8 will need to participate in the questionnaires. You're going to log their email information into the system, and the system will automatically forward them a link to participate in completing the questionnaire. And you'll be monitoring the completion. This is a task that must be completed before the assessment will begin at your school. If it is not done by the assessment date, the NAEP representative will bring in hard copies and ask the principal and the teachers to actually complete that work while they are on site. So as much as possible to encourage your administration and staff to get this done in advance, that would be very helpful. You're going to include all special education, ESL, and resource teachers who teach the NAEP subjects in the sample grades. Again, enter emails of the question recipients, and the system will send them a welcome email and a link to the questionnaires. Some possible things that you could do if you want to print hard copy reminders and put it in their mailbox. Any way that you can encourage them to get it done well in advance of the assessment date. You will be monitoring. You will be able to check progress. You will be able to know which teachers and principals have completed this task, and you will need to follow up with them if they are not getting it done in a timely manner. Your fifth task is to plan for the assessment date. This is all the logistics around how the students will be tested, where the students will be tested, plans for when the school starts, when you have your lunch break for the students. If the assessment team, the NAEP team, has to be at your school the entire day, you want to find a dedicated location for them to remain in. You do not want to have them test students in one location in the morning and then move them to another location in the afternoon. You will want to be able to let them know everything from where to park, if there is parking in your school parking lot, or if there is no parking available. They need to know that well in advance so that they can plan their day. They like to get to the school an hour and a half prior to the very first assessment being started. And they would need time to bring in all of the materials, and if there's no place to park, they're going to need to build in time into their morning to be able to accomplish all of the tasks that they need to do on the assessment day. If you're going to have a lot of accommodated sessions, again, this is planning that has to happen with a NAEP representative in advance of the assessment day, that you will need additional teams to support maybe one-on-one testing or small group testing. If there's a snow day and there could possibly be a 2-hour delay, what's your decision about testing on that day? Will you cancel testing completely, or will you still be able to conduct the test in the afternoon if you have a smaller enrollment of students? At what time of day will you be able to communicate to them that schools will be closed for the day or school will be delayed that day? So all of those types of logistics will need to be thought out in advance and discussed with your NAEP representative as you're planning for the assessment day. Again, this is the process for Plan for Assessment Day. The tutorials are available. We also have suggested testing room layouts. That resource will be available on the OSSE website for you to look at if you want to look at different options for how the DBA testing can be conducted. Those details will be recorded in the system. Again, keep in mind that for DBA testing in your school, there can only be 25 students tested at one time in one location. unless there are several sessions, several teams that need to come into your school, you're going to have to find a location where at least 25, maximum of 25 students at one time can be tested on the Surface Pro tablets. You'll also have to have a separate location for any paper and pencil testing. Those two test modes cannot be tested within the same room. If you have policies around cell phone or restroom breaks or any type of emergency protocols, all that information will need to be discussed in advance with the NAEP representative. Where will the students be dismissed to after they have completed the assessment? If they are done in advance of the rest of the students, what is the protocol for them to be moved out of the classroom as the rest of the students continue testing? You want to encourage participation. This is actually a task that needs to be completed. Whatever resources or ideas that you can come up with to encourage teachers, students, parents, administration to all be on board with the participation in NAEP. NAEP has community hours that can be provided to the middle school students. So 8th graders may receive community hours, 3 community hours, if your school uses volunteer and community hour work as an incentive. That would be a possibility. Some suggestions have included giving students some type of little ticket or treat for participation. Anything that you can come up with that will help the student be at ease, that they do not need to prepare for this assessment, but it is a big deal. And like any other testing that we do within the state, we want to make sure that they're well rested, that they're prepared, that their minds and bodies feel up to the task of participating in the assessment. There are videos that parents can watch. There are sample questions that students, if they'd like to see any of the questions that have been previously asked on the assessments, they are available. There are videos available for teachers. There are videos available for students themselves. So there are several resources out there. If you have ideas or thoughts on other ways you'd like to encourage participation, please don't hesitate to contact myself or the TUDA coordinator, and we'd be happy to work with you in support of those efforts. The final task that you have to complete is to update student lists. This section is a task that has to be done after January 4th. And the main goal of this section is to make sure that any new students that have come to your school since the October enrollment audit file was submitted, or if students were inadvertently missed from your original roster, they need to be included as well. This is your opportunity to identify those students. NAEP will determine if those students will be added to the sample or not. In most cases in DC, if we have new students, they are likely to be added, but NAEP will make that determination. At this point in the process, you're simply going to indicate that, yes, our roster has new students, and these are those students. The only information you're going to need to provide is the first name of the student, last name, and the month and year of the student's birth. No additional information would be required. There are several tutorials to watch for this particular task, and you want to make a determination how you want to submit the information. You can upload an Excel file, or you can add the students one at a time within the MyNAEP system. You want to review your current list and indicate if there is a change. If there's no change, then you can approve the list as is, and you are complete with all of your tasks for preparing for the assessment. You have the ability, again, to give access to complete this information to a data specialist within your school. You want to make sure that this is done on the school level. This cannot be done on the district level. So you want to only give access to local personnel to complete this task if this is something that you're not able to complete yourself, if you do not have access to this information. The two options, again, are to submit a current list, would be a complete roster as an Excel file, or you can add the students individually. This is the process flow for creating that Excel file and uploading the file. You want to enter the date when the file was prepared, because it's important that the file was prepared after January 4th. NAEP does not want to have information provided too far in advance of the assessment window, because if they do want to include students, they want to have them as the most current roster that you have available. If you look at the bottom, you're going to receive an email from NAEP to indicate that they have decided to either accept your students, the new students, to participate in the assessment, or that they will not be adding these students to the assessment this year. If they do add the students to the assessment, that is the time when you're going to have to update their demographic information. But prior to hearing from NAEP, the only thing that you will need at the time is just the students' names and birth date. But if they choose to select the student to participate, you will need to provide demographic information at that point. You're going to also have to indicate if you do an upload, a file upload, how you have the layout of your Excel file. You're going to need to indicate what the structure is of the different columns. Formatting questions, whether you have a single column formatting and what the column headers mean within your file, if you have column headers. Then you're going to review it and submit the upload file. For adding new students, there's going to be a button where you would just simply say add student. You would enter their information, and then you would submit that information for the individual student. You would go back in and add another student and continue until you've completed adding all of the new students. Again, I want to just reiterate that if you need any support with NAEP and the administration, or if you have questions, if you do not have your registration complete as a school coordinator, please contact myself or Valen Cayetano as quickly as you can, so we can help you get started in this process. There are resources available that can give you more information about the actual administration for 2017. If you go to the OSSE website under assessments, there is a NAEP page. Already housed on the page includes specifics about the administration. There's links to the inclusion policies that outlines what accommodations are available through NAEP this year. There are sample grade tests for students if they'd like to see what some of the sample questions are. There are links to the 4th grade and 8th grade sample questions. There's also historical DC results available on the OSSE website. So I encourage you to go out to the website and see what's there. You can also look at the Nation's Report Card. There are data tools there if you'd like to do some data analysis and look at some additional historical data. There are past releases, past NAEP releases available at the Nation's Report Card. And then there's the actual mathematics and reading frameworks and test design information housed on the Nation's Report Card. Under the National Assessment Governing Board, you can look at the NAEP policies that exist, publications that have been completed, as well as any board updates. I've included in this WebEx all of the tutorial videos that you can walk through. Again, as I said, they're only 5 to 10 minutes in length. If you want to watch all of them prior to next Monday's access to the MAEP system, that please feel free to do so, but they're all listed here for you just to help you walk through exactly how to complete each of the tasks. The slide deck was posted last week from this training. We're completing the webinar, and then the Accommodations and Accessibility Features webinar should be scheduled for next week. I ask that you look in the NGA bulletin for more announcements about the actual date of the webinar. I'm also going to be conducting virtual office hours this year, starting next Thursday, December 8th, through January 26th, the Thursday before the assessment window opens, a couple of hours in the afternoon. If you are interested and need any assistance, just send me an email that morning to say that you'll be joining me in office hours, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions or go over any specific details or concerns that you have at that time. My contact information is here, as well as Val and Cayetano's contact information. I would strongly encourage you to reach out to the NAEP help desk if you are having any issues with the MyNAEP system. They need to log any issues and keep track of troubleshooting work that they've done to help with future improvements to the system. So anytime you're having a problem with the MyNAEP system, please contact the help desk directly. I'm going to ask that you complete a 5-question survey. The URL is here, as well as a link to the survey, just to receive participation credit for those that were not able to attend the in-person session. And again, thank you very much for your time today. I hope that I was able to answer many of your questions about the administration, but please feel free at any time to reach out to myself or Valen Cayetano if you have additional questions about the NAEP administration. And I look forward to working with you. Thank you and have a nice day.